Hello again. I wanted to go ahead and give you the next five on the list of my favorite 50 favorite horror movies of all time. So we left off with number 45 last time. That was Cronenberg's The Fly. And at number 44, I have a movie that is here at this spot because I just haven't seen it in a very long time. So it earns this spot because I remember that when I saw it, I was unnerved, fascinated by it, didn't know what was coming, was blindsided by the twist ending, and then just didn't watch it for a long time, but it has stayed with me. And I am keen to revisit it very soon. And I'm referring to The Others, which is an early 2000s film starring Nicole Kidman as a mother in post World War II England, living with her children in a spooky mansion and believing her husband is dead, although he does arrive home later in the film. And they are dealing with supernatural disturbances in their home. This is a movie I can say very little about without spoiling. This is one of those movies that once you hit the twist ending, it is hard to talk about without having that spoiler in the forefront of your mind every time this movie comes up in your memory. So again, this won't be very long. This section won't be very long. But it is on the list because it has that wonderful period horror film atmosphere that I love so much. The characters are complicated. It's fascinating to watch them. Nicole Kidman as the mother is very strong in her role. And I don't mean strong in terms of strong female character. I mean strong just in terms of the performance she gives. She really nails this role. And this is one of those horror movies that is made by people who respect the horror genre, who respect particularly, specifically, the gothic horror genre. So I need to watch this movie, and you should watch this movie. Number 44, The Others. So, next on the list is another one of those Val Lewton films where there are questions is it a horror movie or is it not a horror movie? And that is Curse of the Cat People from 1944, directed by Robert Wise. It is supposedly a sequel to 1942's Cat People, and it includes a lot of the same characters and the same actors, but it is a very different kind of film. This movie is a coming of age story about a girl with a very vivid imagination that sometimes gets in the way of her ability to make friends, her ability to fit in. And her parents are concerned about her, particularly her father, who wants to institute a kind of tough love approach to dealing with his daughter's flights of fancy. And in her loneliness, she conjures up a friend, and that friend takes on the likeness of her father's dead ex-wife, Irena, from whose story was told very tragically in Cat People. So we are never quite sure whether Irena is a ghost or whether she is simply the figment of this girl's imagination. End of story. That possibility, the latter possibility, is strongly hinted to us. But nonetheless, if you read it as a ghost film, it's one of those instances where you have a heroic ghost, Simone, who plays Irena in both films. She gets to be enormously sympathetic this time around. She was tragically sympathetic in the previous film, but here she is straight up good. And at one point, she saves the little girl's life. It is worth a look, and you can tell me once you've seen it, is it a horror film? Is Irena a ghost? Or is this simply a little girl with an overactive imagination who manages, in a rather freakish way, to save herself from danger? And there is some legitimate horror, legitimate scare in this movie, where you have an elderly retired actress reciting the story of the headless horseman, and the little girl hears her recitation and it haunts her dreams, and it haunts mine still a little bit, that voice of hers, and it will probably haunt yours too. So the Curse of the Cat People comes in at number 43. Number 42 is Universal's first attempt at a werewolf film, 1935's Werewolf of London. This movie didn't catch on, so to speak. It did not start a werewolf franchise the way that 1941's The Wolfman would. And it's not as good a movie as the 1941 film, which is higher up on this list. But still, I find that I have a great affection for it. For Henry Hull's obsessive scientist. He's a little bit cold, not good with people, by no means evil, but nonetheless a little bit less openly sympathetic than Lon Chaney Jr.'s Lawrence Talbot would be. But still, he, in trying to acquire a plant that takes its life from the moon rather than the sun, he is bitten by a werewolf, and this plant is the only cure for lycanthropy as it's depicted in this particular film. And he's another one, like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, he's another one of those tragic horror film figures who, it's all a downward spiral from the very first scene. You hope that somehow he might be okay, even though you know he won't. And this one has, I love the 1930s-ness of this film. It's just got so many interesting supporting players, a lot of the old supporting character actors from this particular time in film. And it also has a leading lady, Valerie Hobson, who is not a pushover, who doesn't let herself be pushed around the way that some other horror film heroines around this era would. But it is a fascinating and atmospheric film, and an interesting take on the werewolf legend pre-Lawrence Talbot, pre-1941's The Wolfman. So at number 42, Werewolf of London. Next on the list, at number 41, we have another horror comedy, courtesy of Roger Corman. This one is The Raven. Like the Comedy of Terrors, this one stars Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, and Peter Lorre. At the time when this film was made, I'm guessing Karloff was in a little bit better health than he was back when The Comedy of Terrors was filmed, because he does have a lot more to do. He is a wicked sorcerer, and Vincent Price plays his more sympathetic rival, and the two of them go at it in a wizard's duel, fighting for the soul of Hazel Court, who plays Vincent Price's supposedly but not really dead wife. And Peter Lorre is the kind of shifty character who likes to play both sides. And one of the best moments in the movie actually comes very early on, where you hear Vincent Price speaking the words of the poem The Raven. And he says, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aden it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore. And then you have the Raven's voice saying, how the hell should I know? So if that tickles your fancy, then you're probably going to be wanting to go in for the ride. And Jack Nicholson is also in this, playing a rather ordinary role. He hadn't really become the Jack Nicholson that we would know and some of us would love. But still, if you want to see Jack Nicholson very early in his career, you're going to want to check this movie out. So that's 1941. That is number 41, The Raven. At number 40, Vincent Price just keeps turning up, and here he turns up again, sort of, in The Invisible Man Returns, made in 1940. And this was at the stage in Price's career where Hollywood really had not figured out how to deploy him. And so he was thrown into a number of different kinds of roles, trying to figure out what he worked best in. And so this was one of his earliest attempts at a horror role. And what I find interesting about this movie is, for one thing, in this movie, unlike the original 1933 film, this Invisible Man is completely a victim of circumstance and injustice. So he does not bring his misfortune on himself. And he, like Claude Rains, is not visible. He's swathed in bandages for most of his appearance. And you can hear, because I was really intrigued by this the first time I watched it, you can hear his voice change. At first, you're like, is that Vincent Price? It doesn't sound a whole lot like Vincent Price. But as the movie goes on, his voice starts to change a little bit, and it starts to sound a heck of a lot more Vincent Pricey. And this happens as he is in the process of losing his mind to this serum that has made him invisible. And I'm going to spoil this one just this far, just a teensy-weensy spoiler for my number 40 pick. This is one of the few horror movies that has a completely happy ending. Won't give you any more details about that, but it is worth noting because you don't expect happy endings in this genre. But this one has one. And that is the 40th title on my list. I'm going to close out this video by letting you know that I will be sharing my other picks over the next several days. Looking forward to talking to you about those. And if this video amuses you or interests you, please hit like and subscribe. I am keen to grow my channel and I appreciate your viewership. And until next time.